Good evening. My name is Luz Valenzuela Zamora. I am a first year here at Southwestern, and I am a vocal performance major. I also have the honor to introduce my father, the next speaker, Emilio Zamora. My dad is a full professor in the history department at the University of Texas at Austin, where he teaches undergraduate and graduate courses in Mexican American, Texas, and oral history. He has published 3 single-authored books, 3 anthologies, numerous articles, and has helped publish 2 Texas history texts for our public schools. More recently, in 2014, he translated and edited the World War I diary of José de la Luz Sáenz, the only war diary ever published by a Mexican American. He has received 6 Best Book Awards and 1 Best Article Award from major history professional organizations. Beginning in 2013, he and my mom, Dr. Ángela Valenzuela, have been developing and implementing curriculum on Mexican American history in partnership with the Austin Independent School District, the City of Austin, the University of Texas at Austin, and a community organization from Austin named Nuestro Grupo. The curriculum is being taught in Austin ISD and will also be used in an after-school program, Saturday Academy, beginning on January 10th, 2015. His presentation today is based on the curriculum work that they have been doing.
All right, well, thank you for having me here. I'm here to talk to you about a project that my wife and I are very involved in. And it speaks volumes to how we feel about engaging our community for change. We're very concerned about the problems that Latino youth is having in the public schools. Let me just give you one example of what I mean. Between 2000 and 2014, Mexican Americans have been dropping out 4 times. They're 4 times as likely to drop out of high school during that time period than their white counterparts. Now, what we have here is a serious and somewhat permanent crisis in our schools. Not only are Latino youth, particularly Mexican Americans, dropping out of school in alarming rates, but there's also a case could be made for the fact that they're also being undereducated, particularly in their own history and in their own language. I think this is one of the most serious cultural crimes that has been committed in our times, denying people their history and their language. Language is so intimately tied to identity. When you deny somebody their language and you devalue it to the point where you even punish people, as has been done in some cases throughout the 20th century, you send out a very strong message to youth that they're not appreciated and in some instances not even wanted. Now you may ask, wait a minute, how do you reconcile the fact that they're dropping out in such large numbers and also getting undereducated when we also hear about young Latinos graduating from high school and attending universities, some of the best universities in this country? How do you reconcile these seemingly contradictory trends? Well, we maintain that they're not contradictory trends. They're part of the same experience. Yes, there's increasing numbers of Mexican origin, Latinos generally, that are graduating from high school, but there's still large numbers of them that are not. That's really the current story of Latinos in this country. And that story can be manipulated in different directions, as you can imagine, okay? But that's the fact. And by the way, those that graduate, that are able to graduate, in many instances, they graduate without the knowledge of that history and culture, including the language. There's a friend of mine who heads the program in Taylor, Texas, That may have been the one you were referring to earlier, where they take the high-achieving Latinos from high school and they bring them and they build a cohort and they encourage them to continue succeeding. And so they send them off to universities with this kind of re-energized and being high achievers and being Mexican Americans and so forth and so on. One of the things that has come out of that group, according to my friend who directs the project, has been directing it for well over 20 years, is that they invariably ask, you know, we're already anticipating that when we graduate, we're going to be expected to know Spanish by people in our own communities. We're going to be expected to represent those communities by our employers. When we're teachers, we're going to be asked to come in and advise the administration on how to reach that community. If we're lawyers, we're going to be asked by our employers to provide some kind of sense of what legal needs exist in the Latino community. We're going to be expected, like it or not, to know something about the Latino community. Here we are preparing ourselves to be professionals and to do it by attending major universities. We have been denied our culture and language. So one of the things that this project has done is that they've instituted Spanish language instruction and they've instituted cultural relevant courses to reintroduce the students to that culture. We believe that it's important to teach our children, our youth in the public schools, including Latinos, math and science and those kinds of things. But for us, we see that as a technical kind of fix, there's a great deal to say for it. You know, we're talking about social cultural education in this project that I'm going to talk to you about. Social cultural education. So what is this project? The short of it is that it's a curriculum development and, what is it? What is the terminology? Curriculum development and application, okay? So I've been involved in promoting Mexican American history for a number of years. I've gone to the State Board of Education to protest about the fact that our standard curriculum in the public schools do not incorporate the history and culture of Mexican Americans. We haven't been successful in influencing the opinion of the school board. We failed. We have failed over and over again. So my wife and I and others decided we were just going to go around the school board and go to the district, the Austin School District. Believe it or not, there's great people there already. Good, caring teachers, very bright administrators, great curriculum writers. We saw the challenge as just basically getting the right people together. So we secured some funding. I was connected with the Tejano Monument Project that built that important monument on the Capitol grounds commemorating Tejano history. And one of the things that they figured right before the unveiling is that they wanted to have another monument, one that spoke to the education of our youth. So they asked me to design a project. I did. We secured the funding. That was about 2 years ago. And basically, the project involved a partnership between the University of Texas, Austin ISD, and the city of Austin. At the University of Texas, one of my colleagues taught an undergraduate class, no, actually a graduate class with students doing teacher education. And so she taught a curriculum course. And during 2 semesters, they developed what we call journey boxes. I didn't know anything about this. I was a content person, okay? I'm the one who's supposed to come in to tell people what to teach in the public schools with this new curriculum. But I worked with those students and we developed journey boxes. The journey boxes are basically like shoe boxes. And you select a topic or a theme, you research it, you then provide the teacher who's going to use the curriculum in these journey boxes, you provide them with descriptive narratives of the subject with some primary documents that they might want to use and some ideas on how to use these materials. So we then worked with 6 teachers in 4 different public schools, elementary schools, 4th grade teachers. We provided the materials to them. We worked with them throughout the year. They implemented the material. We found out that some things worked, some didn't, especially when we brought the undergraduate students together with the teachers and with the kiddos, the children. Social engagement is in the process, you know. When you work with a goal in mind, you ought not to lose sight of the fact that the process is very important. We were developing curriculum to implement it, to teach children about their history. But in the process, we're also training new teachers to value this history and to talk about how to implement it, and then to talk to the children and make that contact and hear from the children about what they thought was interesting and exciting and fun and so forth. So everyone learned. I learned a whole lot about curriculum writing. I'm not into curriculum writing, but I've been involved in it. From that point, we developed a second phase of the project in which we are now. We organized a professional development workshop because we learned from our colleagues in the education college that you are not going to get much done in the area of curriculum development and implementation unless you bring the teachers together. And together with the teachers, then come to some understanding about what they think might work, given their own experience. It was necessary to also sit down with professional curriculum writers and give them the material. That was my job. Give them the substance, the themes, the topics, the chronology, and so forth. You need to collaborate with people. Otherwise, you're on your own and you're not going to be successful. So we did a better job of collaborating, in other words, during the current phase of the project. One of the things that I did in the beginning of the second phase, that I sat down and in consultation with everyone, we decided we're going to start with 3 major lesson plans. So I asked myself, what should children in the 4th grade and 5th grade, what should they be learning regarding Mexican American history or Latino history? And how should they learn it? Well, I can't answer the second question. I really can't. Although I've learned a lot, I anticipated some things. What I did is that I wrote two essays for each one of those themes. One theme was immigration. I wrote a conceptual piece and a narrative piece on immigration or migration. Then I wrote another 2 sets of pieces, 2 essays for civil rights, and then another one on local history. We now plan to develop 3, maybe 4 additional lesson plans with the help of the professional curriculum writers. One will be on indigenous heritage, another will be on cultural arts, another on women or gender relations, and the other one we're toying with is the idea of Mexican African American relations over time. So what I wanted to talk to you today is about the first lesson. But before I do that, let me say that we went through the routine again. We had a professional development workshop. We brought in 25 teachers selected by the district, all of whom were working with the dual language program. I don't know how many of you know about the dual language program. It's one of the most successful bilingual programs that we have. And people are really investing a whole lot of energy and other resources into these programs. They're making them work. So we selected 25 teachers who were bilingual. They then participated in a professional development workshop where I talked about the content, and then the teachers that had worked with us previously came in and talked about their own experiences in teaching the material. And then, so we had like a stable of 25 teachers ready to start teaching. Then we brought in another group of curriculum writers, and they finessed the curriculum that we had developed. The curriculum is really well done. It's TEKS aligned. It's aligned with the standard curriculum in the public schools, and it's adjusted to be used to teach second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and 11th graders in the Austin ISD. So we were successful. I remember Mom used to tell me during my radical days in the 60s, son, don't bump your head against these people. Go around them, go over them, go under them. You don't always have to go and meet them squarely. She was right. Sometimes you just have to go around some of these obstacles. That's what we did, and I think we're being successful. This summer, we implemented the 3 lessons during the summer camp for dual language students. I think we had about close to 600-700 students, all of them 4th and 5th graders, and the material was taught in Spanish. The curriculum is in Spanish and in English. It is now available for any Austin ISD teacher who wants to use the material. It's available for them to use it. And we have 25 teachers out there that are especially encouraged to use it. And we haven't done that evaluation to determine how many of them are using them, but we trust that a good number of them are using the curriculum. The other thing that we've done, we're developing an independent institution, independent of Austin ISD. And we called it the Saturday Academy. Now some of our indigenous enthusiasts decided to change it to Cloutly something Academy. I haven't learned to pronounce the word yet. But we decided we wanted to organize a Saturday Academy. We belong to an organization called Nuestro Grupo. Nuestro Grupo is a community-based organization that's been involved throughout. And it's Nuestro Grupo that basically is running the show. We thought it was absolutely necessary that people from the community have a direct say in the development of the curriculum and its application, okay? Nuestro Grupo decided that we should have our own institution to teach this curriculum. We can't just depend on the district to do it for us. So we're setting up a Saturday Academy. Our inauguration is January the 10th. Anybody who's interested is welcome to come and join us. Give me your name and address. We'll put you on the mailing list and you can come. Now, a couple of things I should say. We believe that what we've done offers a model. It represents a model that can be used anywhere by people interested in creating some educational change in the Latino community or in other communities. The model basically calls for collaboration between the university, a district, a community organization, and in this case, the city of Austin. The reason we're collaborating with the city of Austin is because the city owns a very important institution called the MIS Barrientos Mexican American Cultural Center. It's the jewel in the Latino community. It's a beautiful community center, and that's where we're going to be holding our Saturday Academy. We're going to grow this thing to include other grades. I'm particularly interested in offering services to the parents, English instruction, advice on legal issues pertaining to migration and other technical issues. It depends on what they want. Whatever they want, we'll try to offer them those services. I think that it's, aside from all of this, what we're doing, I think it's giving students an opportunity to join with us and engage the community, particularly people that are interested in the teaching profession. We're offering them basically a laboratory where they can learn. The other thing I think is important, significant about this project, that it's part of a larger effort. There are other people in other parts of the state that are also talking about educational reform of different types. But in the Latino community, aside from the issue of testing and accountability generally, in the Latino community, a lot of people are talking about developing curriculum like the ones we're doing now. This is why we believe that what we've done represents a very important model that can be replicated. And so what we're doing is going around the state and talking to people. We went and talked made a presentation at the recent state conference of the Texas Association of Bilingual Educators. We're going to go speak to the Mexican American School Board Association meeting in Austin. They're already endorsing what we're doing and they want to promote it. Other people are taking other approaches to educational reform in the Latino community. Other people that are dealing with curriculum. That's what I'm talking about. Some people are talking about offering courses that students can take in the high schools, courses on Mexican American studies that can and receive credit at a university, wherever there's a lot of work to be done there. But anyway, there's a larger effort going on. So what do you teach? That's a question I can answer. How do you teach it? I leave it to other people to make that decision. There's a number of things that I think are particularly important regarding migration that I think children should hear and discuss with their teachers. There's another side to this curriculum that has to do with values. Civic engagement is an important value we're going to promote with the children. Personal responsibility, empathy, compassion for others, and so forth. I think also respect for elders. The parents are going to be there, and we're going to figure out ways to promote that idea. Respect for ancestors as well. But as far as the curriculum is concerned, I believe that the very same things that we're teaching at the universities can be taught at the elementary grades. That's why I thought at first of writing that conceptual piece. In other words, I asked myself, what concepts do we want to teach these children? So I wrote an essay, and some of these things may be really obvious to you, but they're not necessarily obvious to the children. And the children, by the way, are coming with personal experiences that bring to life many of these things. I think one thing that is very important is that migrations are universal experiences. That needs to be taught. The children need to think about that. That can be done with activities involving geography, language, for example. The teachers are the ones who best know how to translate the concept of a universal experience to the classroom. The push and pull theory that we use when we teach migrations, that is, people migrate because there are things that they search for, that draw them. There are things that also push them away and out from where they are. I think the whole experience of migration has to be studied in terms of push and pull. The other very important concept is to think about migration as a general category and immigration and emigration as subsets of that. I think it's very important for the children to learn that or to discuss that. I'm suggesting to the teachers that when they talk about migrations, especially, it doesn't matter whether they're domestic migrations or international migrations, that they ought to talk to the children first about the circumstances that lead to the decision to migrate. Circumstances in Honduras, for example, involve a great deal of violence, okay, and corruption on the part of government officials, including municipal police, okay? The second important element in the story of migrations is what happens, the very act of migrating is worthy of studying, whether it's domestic or international. The children should be able to make that distinction. Dad, went and talked to some friends, came back home, talked to mom about these opportunities out there and so forth and so on. We then made the decision, and on such and such a date, my dad made the trip and then sent for us and so forth and so on. There's a book that I recommend very highly that you may want to see that talks about the act of migrating. Sonia Nazario, Enrique's Journey. Read it. We are facing a serious humanitarian crisis right now on the border with unaccompanied children. She addresses that issue to the point of participating in the actual migration with some of these young people on trains and on buses and everything. So we want to make that distinction. The circumstances surrounding the decision to migrate, the experience of migrating, and then adjustment once you arrive here. That's a whole other subject. And adjustment it used to be very simplified as involving, the generational improvements that eventually, inevitably leads to structural assimilation by the third or fourth generation. That may have been the case with many members of many European origin immigrants, not all, but with many of them. They underwent serious problems the first, second generation. By the third generation, they're somewhat scattered throughout the social structure. That's equality in our system, a class system. When members of a community are scattered throughout the social structure. No one's calling for moving a group up entirely up to the top. But what you hope for is that Latinos can be distributed throughout the social structure, much like everybody else. Okay? But anyway, structural assimilation is lagged behind. The structural assimilation meaning getting the jobs, earning the wages to be able to move in a particular part of town, send your children to those good schools and so forth and so on. Structural assimilation is lagging behind acculturation. Okay? That's one thing we can say. They're not acculturating to the same extent or the same way, let's put it that way. Acculturation involves crisscrossing paths. Some things that you might not even expect to hear. In places like Houston, for example, there's indigenous people, large numbers of indigenous migrants who've come in from Central America who can't speak Spanish. They speak their own native language, and then they next learn English at the work sites. So, adjustment means getting accustomed to living in this new multicultural environment, even within the Latino community. And adjustments are major challenges. So we want the children to talk about that. And we want the children to also hear about policies and enforcement practices. Immigration policies and enforcement practices. How are the teachers going to do that? We're talking about that. The teachers are meeting. We have committees in nuestro grupo. I'm on the fundraising committee. And the teachers are in the curriculum committee. So they're going through this curriculum. I have it here. And they're talking about the activities that they're going to use to promote learning in different areas. But policy and enforcement practices, there's a lot of things that we can say about that. But one of the things that I'm telling them is that it's really obvious to people who study immigration is that enforcement practices vary, okay? Secondarily, immigration policy is not intended to close the border. It's intended to regulate the flow, depending on the kinds of political pressures the government receives from the different constituencies. So policies are intended to regulate the flow. Enforcement practices are intended to abide by the influences, political pressures made by Latino civil rights organizations, political parties, different kinds of groups. So there's a lot of themes or topics that we want the teachers to address. Obviously, they have to be, things have to be done differently depending on the grade level and the experiences of the teachers. But we already have funding for 2 teachers, for 2 classes of 4th and 5th graders, and we've selected also 3, maybe 4 assistants who will come from the teacher preparation program at UT Austin. We'll inaugurate on January the 10th. We're going to start evaluating what we've done with regards to the material that is being taught in the public schools of Austin. And we don't know to what extent that's worked or who's using it. But we'll also be evaluating the work we do at the Mexican American Cultural Center, and we hope to start publishing some material in different formats so that people can be informed and be encouraged possibly to borrow from us the curriculum. We're willing to share it, by the way. If anybody's interested in the curriculum, let me know. I have a PDF file. I can send it to you. I can also send you the 2 essays I did on immigration, the conceptual piece and the narrative piece. Just let me know. So, do we have time for questions, or did I run out of time? Yes. Questions, comments? Yes?
Question, are you going to go back a little bit further in history to U.S. foreign policy that's been active, for decades?
Yeah.
And contributed to designing governments, emerging democratic governments, and also to break down social structure so that they not have inequality of distribution, and breaking ground for gangs and blood traffickers?
Our point of departure are the wars of the middle 1800s, for now. One of the reasons what we want to include indigenous heritage is because it allows us to move even further back, to provide a greater scope. But right now there's other reasons, but right now it's 1846, 48 for the most part, as well as the 1830s. The idea, the big question, I think, overall, is how did Mexicans get incorporated into U.S. society during the late 19th century and throughout the 20th century? And our response to that basic question is that they get incorporated as an ethnic minority in the bottom segment of the working class. They get incorporated on an unequal basis. Our teachers are not going to be using this language, obviously, with fourth graders and fifth graders. They have to translate all of that stuff. They're working on it. They already have the curriculum, and they're going to have to figure out other activities besides the ones that are suggested in the curriculum. I hope that answered your question.
It's sufficient for
Huh?
now. It's sufficient for now. It doesn't
Well,
apply just to this curriculum.
well, when you
It applies to whites, in our high schools and that way.
Yeah.
There seems to be both groups really understand that history and understand what's happening right now in terms of even like
Yeah, yeah. We're going to be working on broadening the scope. We're pretty narrow, absolutely. But I think it's very important to tell that story of changing social structures, even from the colonial period through the Mexican period and the westward movement of people into what is now the American Southwest. I mean, there's major changes in the social structure of the Mexicans who remain after 1848. Their social structure was pretty stratified, kind of buckles under the pressure of the newcomers and their attempt to gain control over the body politic and economic systems. That social structure changes significantly later in the 20th century as well. It's very important, absolutely, not to treat Mexican Americans by themselves. I think this is one of the reasons why we think it's very important to talk about relations with African Americans. But the relations with, in the state of Texas, for example, with the Czech people is a very important topic. With Irish people, in places like Central Texas, where they all find themselves at the bottom of the rural social structure as tenants and land renters and laborers, African Americans, Mexican Americans, Irish, Germans, and so forth. I think it's very important to show instances of interracial cooperation as well, that emerges naturally out of those kinds of situations where people find themselves together in a class. So we're very mindful of class issues, racial thinking. Anything else? Any other question or comment? Yes? You have to speak loud, please.
I was just wondering, what are some ways to incorporate also
What's that? I'm sorry, I can't hear. I'm hard of hearing.
I was just wondering, what are some of the ways to address also, like just the changing face of immigration in terms of, especially here in Texas, also incorporating South American
Yes.
immigrants?
Well, you know that I tried to comment on the major challenges within the Latino community, the challenge to understand the differences, even especially now, when I made reference to the Mayan who only speak their own language. That's why I was suggesting that there is that challenge of understanding within the Latino community. The class differences are becoming very sharp within the Latino community. There's like two levels of inequality or difference that need to be understood. There's an inequality between Latinos as a whole and the larger society, but there's a, looming problem of social inequality within the Latino community. And many of those people that find themselves at the very bottom are the recent arrivals. And so it's absolutely necessary to think about national origin, but also where people are in the social structure. Absolutely. I've always thought that sometimes the greatest adjustment, the challenge of adjusting to life here, involves adjusting to Latinos first. Well, it happens simultaneously, but it almost seems like you got to do it here first within Latinos and then also with the larger society. But the differences within the Latino community are marked. I think that there's an overrepresentation of Latino children of Latino immigrants among the dropouts, for example. Hondureños are increasing dramatically in places like Texas, other parts of the Southwest. Dominican Republicans up in the Northeast. There's a lot of people. I recommended a book earlier in a conversation by Tobar, T-O-B-A-R. I think it's Hector Tobar. He's a journalist with the Los Angeles Times, and he has this great book where he basically travels from Los Angeles to Texas, the Deep South, and up to the Northeast, the Midwest, and the Northwest. And everywhere he goes, he finds Latinos. And he describes all these Latino communities. And he's very sensitive to difference, cultural difference. But he's also very sensitive to the Latinoization process. Acculturation within the Latino community goes in different directions. Sometimes the Mexicans predominate, but sometimes the Latinoization just incorporates everybody in this interesting mixes where some Central Americans go ahead and pass for Mexicans just simply because they don't want to make an issue out of things, for example. It's very complex, but Tobar captures that. He basically says, here's a community of Mexicans, Hondureños, Salvadoreños, and Guatemaltecos, and Mexican nationals. And then he talks about how they're adjusting with each other. The parents are concerned about the children's education. How do they get together and agree on things? And he talks about that. It's really fascinating. There's increasing numbers of publications on Latinos, the Latinoization of the Latino community, the Americanization generally of the Latino community, the Latinoization of American society. That's what I was noting earlier. Yeah. It's a very complex story. I don't know how this is all going to end, but we have good people. We have good ideas. Excuse me. I lost my voice 2-3 days ago. It's holding up. But we have good people. We have a good idea, and everybody is really working very hard. Oh, thank you. Working very hard, and the academy's going to work. How much it's going to grow, I don't know. But I was serious. If you want to come and join us, it's going to be a fun inauguration. We're going to have music, food, and the kids are going to be there, the parents. And January the 10th. If you want to come, give me your name and email. Okay?
I think hearing these two talks in tandem is kind of interesting and troublesome.
Well.
in the sense that here we have an education program that's targeted the way sort of the first speaker brought up, right? Targeted towards creating an empowered community that, that is able to create change through how they function within sort of a capitalist-oriented society, right? But if we see the way, right, the effects that capitalism has had globally, right, that we're now seeing the concentration of wealth, right, in the hands of a few, and for the most part, everyone just struggling to maintain some sort of middle-class status, right? And so it's interesting to think about teaching students about the inequalities that their communities have faced, when in actuality, this education will lead to them sort of contributing to the inequalities of others, right? So I can think about students here, right, Latino students in, college classroom. I'll point myself out, right? And I have to come dressed up to present here, and I'm wearing clothes that, right, was produced, by folks in India and Pakistan, right? And really creates these sort of global inequalities, right? So it's interesting to think about an education platform that basically is creating consumers that are now exploiting others around the world, right? So if we can think more about a liberatory platform that came out of the original sort of birth of ethnic studies in the current moment of the corporatization of higher ed, right?
We've talked about concientización among the teachers. That is the building of a political awareness suited to the needs of the children and their families. And it hasn't been easy to decide how we do that. And we've kind of come to the point where because some teachers may resist that, may misinterpret the intent behind this. My concern is that this by itself is not going to do anything. This has to work in conjunction with other political work. This is political work.
Yeah.
If other people don't do their part, well, absolutely, we're just preparing them to be consumers like everybody else. But our hope is that other people will do their part. But regarding concientización, in order to prepare the students the teachers need to understand what this means, what they're doing. They're not just simply adding to the knowledge of the child. I think they need to think about liberating kinds of ideas. For example, one of the things that we need to do is include the migrating experiences of the children. That aside, it's also kind of all of this can be very disarming when you consider, other people ain't going to do their part, so what are we doing just preparing these kids to be consumers and to be consumed? You can just conclude that it's not worth doing anything then. It can be very disarming. I think the best we can do is be thinking critically and consciously as we move forward. And for me, what is really critical is the conversations we have with the teachers. And I'll be upfront with them and I'll tell them, some people call it concientización. Let's talk about values. That's what I think we should do. Values, because that's the language of the bureaucracy in education anyway. And values are important, an important point of departure. Respect for the rights of others, respect for your ancestry, empathy for others, understanding of difference. So the teachers need to understand that if you don't include those values, this is for nothing. So we're doing our part. We're assuming somebody else is going to do their part, but our part is to make sure that we go into this, in Spanish we say, con los ojos abiertos, fully aware of what we're doing. But, it can be very depressing when you look at the loss. We're losing all kinds of battles all over. But we have to make an effort. And sometimes you start small, and then you build. And in the process, not only do you build, in this case, a program, but you build alliances. I think we're influencing teachers. The teachers that won't even teach with us are going to go away and teach in other parts of the state, and they're going to carry with them that philosophy, that our primary interest is in teaching values, promoting values. Curriculum really is secondary. The content is really secondary. But the curriculum is also important. We believe in social cultural education as a way to motivate children, get them excited about learning. We really believe that. But the values are central, or concientización.